Hi, and welcome to another art creation video. So, in this piece, I am showing 3 out of the 4 watercolor seahorses that I recently made. So if you want to skip past these first 2 practice pieces, go ahead and just skip to the 5-minute mark of this video. That's where the really good painting actually starts. So of course, that begs the question, if you have not skipped to the 5-minute mark at this point, why did I even show these 2 if they're just practice pieces and if I was going to tell you to just skip ahead? Well, it's because I wanted to actually show the whole process. I think a lot of times when we see a work of art, we only see the finished piece. We only see the piece that the artist wanted to show, the piece that was maybe good enough to hang in the gallery or to display online, and we don't often get to see the maybe sometimes piles of scraps or rough sketches or false starts and failed attempts at making that finished piece. And I kind of just wanted to show that here, that this was part of my process. I really wanted to paint a good seahorse, and the first 2 really did not turn out very good, but they were kind of necessary steps in order to get to the better piece. And so that's why I wanted to show them. So if you're still watching this, thank you. Thank you for your patience with me, I guess. As I said, this video shows 3 of the 4 seahorses that I made. The 4th one I'm hoping to put into its own separate video because it really did turn out nicely, and I think it deserves its own video. And so hopefully, Lord willing, I intend to upload that soon-ish, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. So if you don't want to miss that, then please do subscribe to my channel, hint hint, and then hopefully you won't miss that whenever I do actually get to upload it. So about these seahorses, the first one is on the left. That was the first one I made. The second one I made was on the right, as you can see. The first one took me about 20 minutes total. So, I mean, honestly, if I kind of feel like, I just maybe wasn't putting in a lot of effort with it where I should have. But part of it was I was just trying to get in some more practice with my watercolor markers and things. And I was just attempting a couple things to see how it would look. So I knew the first one was not going to be the masterpiece. It really was genuinely a practice piece. The second one on the right, though, I was kind of hoping was going to turn out a little bit better. It still didn't. I spent a little bit more time on it. I spent about a little over 30 minutes on it, I think. So obviously I've sped up both of these for you now, so you don't have to sit here and watch the first one for 20 minutes and the second one for half an hour. But yeah, so just trying to get some practice. So with all of my seahorses, I started out with just using my watercolor pencils to sketch them out, and then filled them in with my watercolor markers, and then obviously with paintbrushes and water. As you can see, what I'm doing there with both of them right now is with the paintbrush and water and just trying to really fill out those colors. I forgot on both of these first 2 to add a dorsal fin, so oopsie. I did remember a dorsal fin on the 3rd one, which you will see later in this video, and also on the 4th and final one that really turned out well, which I mentioned will hopefully, Lord willing, have its own separate video. So yeah, I think I was just adding some final touches, trying to add some little, at some point I think I add some little freckles to these horses. I think with the first one on the left, you can see I'm just sort of, I don't know what I was doing, just playing with trying to add some detail, add those little spiky things, and obviously they don't look very good, but I mean, the second one came out a little bit better. You can see I'm adding all the little dots and freckles to the second one. So I feel like I got the outline better on the second one, just using, making use of the nifty effect that watercolor really does give with that sort of outline when you kind of push the water to the edges, and anyway. Oh, and it looks like I'm using a little white gel pen just to clean up a couple things and add a little shine to the eye there. So just to kind of crisp up the lines. And then, yeah, that's how those 2 turned out. So now we are on to the third seahorse that I painted. So this one I did in blue. And as with the others, I just sketched it out with my watercolor pencils first. And I think I just used one color of pencil for this one. And then for most of the horse, even to get all the different kind of gradients that I ended up with, I think I only used one of my watercolor markers, except for, as you'll see later, the snout and the tail, which was a different color, and then a final finishing touch at the end when I added, I'll call them freckles, I guess. So you'll see that later. So right now, yeah, I'm just filling it in, I think with just that one color of pencil, and they are watercolor pencils, so as soon as you add water to them, which you can see I'm doing here, you know, it kind of gives this nice pastel look, and it starts to turn into watercolors. So this is my third, you know, my third seahorse painting that I did over the course of, I think, a few days. I think I painted, I want to say approximately one a day for like a little while, so I did not paint all of these in one day. It was probably the better part of a week, if I recall correctly. So there, I'm finally adding in the watercolor marker, just kind of blocking in some, you know, main sections on its body. And then just, you know, going in and filling it in with the paintbrush, you know, and some water, obviously. So again, this is all just one marker that I got these kind of different gradients of blue with, which was a lot of fun, and I think I'm kind of happy with the way it turned out. So there, with the paintbrush, you know, just it's kind of fun with watercolor, you know, to take the water with the slight tint of color in it and really kind of push out those outlines to get those different little spiky spine things, and to just get a really nice kind of a crisp outline. I feel like that's fun to do. It's one of the strengths of watercolor is you can get these kind of interesting effects where in the center of, you know, when it's really wet, right, in the center of whatever you're working on, it may be really pale, but then toward the edges it gets really dark, and then it makes this final really dark outline of wherever that section of water went when you were painting. So I like that effect in watercolor, so it was fun to attempt to achieve that here, as I was doing with all the little spiky things. Now, one thing I also want to say about this, I think this seahorse, and then also the final one, which, as I said, I've not uploaded yet anywhere online, so haven't shown that one yet, but hoping to get that one up pretty soon. So with both of these, the final ones, the first two, I think I just painted in pretty much one sitting and called it good. The first two that you saw at the beginning of this video, but this one, and then the last one, I painted over the course where I think I got to a certain point where then I let it dry overnight because I wanted it to be really dry before I put on the finishing touches. So I think what I'm doing here was still the first day, but sometimes I get kind of nervous because I'll paint something and a little while later, you know, I'll check back on it, I don't know, however many, 20, 30 minutes later, and I'll feel it, and to the touch, it feels dry. To my fingers, it feels dry, but then sometimes if I add something that's too wet, it sort of reactivates it and gets it wet again, and then sometimes it can get all blurry and smudgy, and it can create an effect that I was not going for. So I wanted to avoid that here by being really certain that it was very dry, and so at a certain point, I did leave it overnight, I think, if I recall correctly. And so I think in total for this blue seahorse, I used 3 different colors of the watercolor markers. So you can see the second one there with the, it's that sort of peachy, beigey eggshell. So I wanted the snout and the tail to be not blue, that sort of peachy color. But the rest of the seahorse's body was just that one shade of blue. You know, it was that one shade of color, watercolor pencil, and then it was one watercolor marker, and then the final detail for just the freckles that I did last, or really late on this, that was a darker blue watercolor marker. So I think it was just a total of 3 different watercolor markers that I used in this. Watercolor markers. So I think I'm getting close to the point where I probably would have set it for the night and let it dry, except I do think that I think I remembered to actually paint the dorsal fin on this one. So I think I painted the dorsal fin before I let it dry for about 20 some odd hours probably. So yeah, I just wanted a nice fade though from the blue body to the beige snout and tail. And I wanted to add a little bit more dimension in this one. I wanted to be very intentional to try to improve this one from the first 2. And so part of that was adding detail, but also just making sure, you know, at the beginning that my initial sketch was actually good, that the structure and the shape and the pose were solid to begin with. Because if those aren't solid to begin with, it doesn't matter how much detail you add, it's not going to improve the overall piece if your underlying sketch is lousy. It just won't. You know, it's like putting lipstick on a pig, you know. If your foundation isn't good, it doesn't matter what you add to it. It's not going to make the foundation better. You can kind of trick your eye, or you can trick some viewers into seeing that, into thinking, oh yeah, that's really high quality because there's all this detail. But that's not necessarily true. There are some highly detailed pieces that are not very good, and there are some very simply done pieces that are really solid that, you know, artists have created. And so yes, I was definitely trying to add more detail here, but that wasn't the only thing I was trying to do to make it better. I wanted to, you know, I think the overall shape of it was a big part in making this piece stronger than the first 2, because I think I really was more careful and I was more slow. And I think I just landed on a better overall form, you know, just a stronger, more accurate silhouette, I think is the word I'm looking for. So while I did add more detail, I do feel like it wasn't just more detail for the sake of detail, it was more intentional. I think I knew more where I was adding detail and why. But you know, I'm still glad for those first 2 pieces. I'm glad that I got them out of my system, that they gave me a chance to sort of practice and see what the paints and the colors and the markers and the pencils and the water would all do together, and how they would all react to it. Okay, so was that the overnight cut? I'm not sure. But okay, so there I was painting the dorsal fin. I did not forget the dorsal fin. I forgot it on the first 2. Did not forget it on this one. And again, that's all just one shade of that sort of eggshell watercolor marker, but just, you know, different dilutions with water kind of get the different gradients, which is fun. It's really fun to play with that. And I will go ahead and take this opportunity to confess, I don't think I've ever actually used real watercolors. I have used watercolor pencils and more recently watercolor markers, but I have not used what I think are probably more common, like the little, I don't know if you call them like watercolors like in a palette, but they kind of come in these little trays, and when you open up the tray, there's like these different sort of hard, they almost look like hard candies, I would assume. I don't even know. I haven't even seen one, honestly. But it's like just these different colors in these little sections, and they're hard, but if you add water to them, I think then they get, you know, you can actually get a little bit of paint on the brush, and then and then you can paint with them like that. I've never used them though, so I don't even know what I'm talking about. I've seen people kind of demo them a little bit on YouTube, but I've never used them. I also, there's apparently something like watercolor in a tube, which sounds really fascinating to me. I'd love to try that sometime, but I have never tried it. So the only watercolors I have experience with are the watercolor pencils and the watercolor markers. That is it. So I'm confessing that now. So yeah, finally putting on all the finishing touches, adding the little dots. Definitely, I'm pretty sure I waited overnight to add those little dots because I did not want all those freckles to just blur and get all messed up and just kind of blur into the rest of the blues. I wanted them to be very distinct, sharp little dots because the rest of it was so soft and kind of blurry looking. So I wanted that contrast. I wanted it to look all freckly. And then obviously added the final details to the dorsal fin as well. I think probably, I'm assuming I think I painted the dorsal fin and then let it sit overnight. So then by the time I went back to the dorsal fin and added the blues to the dorsal fin, it was plenty dry because I'm sure I wanted that effect as well. I'm sure I wanted it to be dry. But anyway, I just want to thank you so much for watching this video. We're getting close to the end, so please do give it a thumbs up if you liked it. I would love it if you would, if you want to share this video pretty much anywhere online, that would be awesome. That super duper help me out. And if you want to see more artsy content in the future, then please subscribe, and I will hopefully be producing more. I do not have the speed or skill or ability right now to produce as often as once a week. I would like to do that someday, but I don't know if that's even possible in the remotely near future. So you're definitely not going to get too many notifications from me too frequently about this if you do subscribe. So, but yeah, hopefully it won't be too long before I upload again. And again, just thanks for watching, and God bless you.